Hi, everyone. Thanks for your stamina. You're still here. We're nearly there. Yeah, so I really want to tell you about a little bit about a cargo bike culture, which, even until a few months ago, I didn't really know a lot about, and that's the cargo bike culture of Brazil. I wrote an article about it in Carrier. I don't know if you've heard of Carrier. That's our magazine. There's still some copies available on the table. Take a look. That's the cover. And yeah, so we were invited, Jos and I, to Brazil by an organization called Transporte Ativo, and that's an NGO based in Rio, which kind of it just kind of promotes active travel in a number of different forms. This is their logo, which is very instructive what they do in Brazil. And they invited us to a cargo bike conference. It's actually their second conference. I'm not going to try and pronounce this. My Portuguese is terrible, but it was basically about cargo bikes, and it was the second one that they'd had. And we had Ze Lobo, who is the director of Transporte Ativo. He came to the Cargo Bike Festival last year. He did a very good speech, and that's actually when I first heard about Brazilian cargo bike culture. A few months later, he invited us to this conference, which he held in September in Rio. It's actually in the planetarium in Rio, and Jos and I were able to speak, and there were a number of other presentations, most of which we didn't understand, but we loved the pictures. And the next day, we were also able to hang out with a few of the people who had been at the conference as well, in the gardens of the planetarium, and we tried out a number of the cargo bikes there that are made locally. There's Jos with a local manufacturer called Olé. And Jos is here. Jos is being interviewed by a local YouTube phenomenon who's called Renata Falzoni, who's if you speak Portuguese, then you should follow her YouTube channel. It's called Bici é Legal, which means cycling is cool, but it also means cycling is legal. So that's also good. So yeah, we had a great day the next day, just in the sun, trying out a whole bunch of different bikes, and getting to know it's a small cargo bike interested community there, and just trying out a whole bunch of different bikes. And this bike you see here is a very typical Brazilian style cargo trike. So you can see here it has a single foot brake. You push on there and it pulls this thing and pulls the brakes onto the back wheel. And you can see also that that it has these springs underneath. These are actual car suspension springs, and that's how the load is suspended and gets over some of the quite potholed roads and cobbles in Brazil. We also were privileged enough to be able to go and visit a local manufacturer that's called Palacios dos Triciclos, and they're based in a city just north of Rio, and go and visit their factory, and where it turned out that many of the cargo bikes that we had seen, and we'll come on to them later in the presentation, they build quite a number of these cargo bikes, just this one small factory. So this is Renato, who started the company about 25 years ago. And here he is explaining something to us. I think this is one of his frame jigs. You can see in the background there the suspension coils. And it's really, one of those kind of gritty. It's a fairly small workshop. It's actually probably maybe about the size of this red carpet that we're standing on, maybe a little bit larger. Really, just kind of industrial location, really, where they have 3 staff, and they pump out something like 250 cargo trikes every year. And you can see them welding away there. And we were able to try out the bikes as well. And so it's a family business. This is Renato here and his wife Tatiana. And we're also quite inspired by Gabriel, their teenage son, who it seems like he may well want to take over the business one day. So that's another kind of inspiring story that we got from when we were in Brazil. But where are these bikes being used? Where we were staying was on the kind of world famous Copacabana beach, but it's also a neighborhood. You can see that it's a place where there's quite a lot of cargo bikes. If you're standing on the kind of the street by the beach there, you'll see, if you stay still for more than a few minutes, then you'll see several of these cargo trikes. They're mainly trikes coming past, and they're delivering all sorts of things to the beach huts, going back and forth, ice, humongous sacks of ice. You also get these two-wheelers as well, often with a small front wheel, and they were also built at the factory we were at, by the way. This was a more rare format, that we didn't see too many of these trikes with 2 wheels in the back, but one or two we saw. So it's really a play. It's not something that I would have expected before I saw Ze Lobo's presentation, but it's really they're almost everywhere. And this is the beachfront in Copacabana, where there's actually it's a kind of Olympic legacy. They had the Olympics in 2016. They installed a bike lane there. I think it's really kind of exceptional. There isn't, there's a certain area around the Copacabana area where there is a bit of cycling infrastructure, but if you go out into the wider city, I think that's more the exception than the rule. But it's not just about the beach as well. Copacabana is this world-famous 4-kilometer wide beach. But if you go back into the neighborhood, then you'll find that there's also a hive of activity there going on with cargo bikes. So the neighborhood back from the beach is about 4 or 5 blocks deep, and then there's mostly a kind of a bunch of cliffs there, basically. So it's kind of hemmed in. And in that area, the 4 kilometers wide by 4 or 5 blocks, Ze Lobo told us that there are 300,000 people living and working in that area. So it's extremely dense, it's high rise. And those are actually the conditions in which cargo bikes really work well. So this bike here is delivering groceries. A lot of the supermarkets there have their own fleets of cargo bikes for delivery. There's a couple of supermarkets, and I think each of them has a fleet of 200. So that's already quite impressive. This was an interesting one. It's got a bit of a different suspension here, and it's got a wider bed. Well, bed. It's for mattresses. There are actually quite a number of mattress shops, which we couldn't work out quite why there were so many. But they all had their own custom cargo bikes with this other suspension, and you would see them riding around with several mattresses kind of stacked on top. There's another one for delivery. Also, dogs get delivered as well. So there's what you can also see, it's mainly men riding these bikes around. We asked Ze Lobo about that, and he's saying, it's a social safety thing. He has been working on, the condition, improving the conditions and making it so that it's more attractive for women to cycle. But really, if you look at the numbers, and thinking about the last panel with of women in cycling, it's really at a very low level. They've got a lot of work to do there on gender gap, but it's what they have in common with a lot of countries is that the infrastructure isn't there. There's the social safety aspect, and many of the bikes are quite hard to ride, and that makes it perhaps less interesting to ride as well. They're usually very friendly when you ask for a photo. They love to, these delivery guys always love to give you a thumbs up, and some of them could be really stacked up very high with like I say, ice, or they would just ride very slowly to get where they needed to. Yeah. Also, elsewhere in the city, cargo bikes are used for other purposes. So this was next to one of the main museums in Rio on the waterfront, and they're using it as a kind of impromptu stall to sell beer or trinkets or souvenirs, and with the umbrella there as well, because it got quite hot as well. So that was another interesting use. They're not just used in the Copacabana neighborhood, but also elsewhere in the city, but only really in these most dense areas. There are some areas of Rio which are more sprawled out, and then they're really not used there. Yeah, there's another shot of this museum there. We also asked Ze Lobo and Renata Falzoni, the YouTuber I was talking about cargo bike use elsewhere in Brazil, and it turns out that there are a number of different cities which have their own specific contexts, and they have their own different cycling cultures and cargo bike cultures. So there's a lot of the coastal cities will have a similar-ish cargo bike culture to what you see on Copacabana. There are some interesting car-free islands, for example, where everything gets moved around by cargo bike, and especially adapted cargo bikes where there's one island in particular we were told about where the streets are just very thin, so you have these very narrow cargo bikes to fit through those streets. So that's another interesting, within this kind of Brazilian context, which I hadn't even thought of really until about a year ago, despite spending a lot of time thinking about cargo bikes. There are all these different contexts and lots of different examples of cargo bike culture. If you want to find out more, please read the article. It's in Carrier. It's this is Ze Lobo here, the yellow portrait there. It goes into a lot more detail than I could just now, but you can see some of the photos we've used, and it was really a privilege to be invited there by Ze Lobo and Transporte Ativo, and to be able to write this article and really kind of dive into this culture, which I hadn't really appreciated. And
you have the opportunity to say
just leave you with this one thought about, or it's more of a fact really about Brazilian cargo bike culture. It's that whereas in Europe and in Northern Europe where we used to have a cargo bike culture, beginning in the 1930s or so, and then the car and the van rose up, and then the cargo bike kind of disappeared. What we were told is that the cargo bike never really went away, and it's just continued. And I find that fascinating. That's just something that's been a kind of constant thing in Brazilian society. So anyway, check out the article, and thank you very much for listening. Obrigado.